So it's kind of, it's unfair, and it winds up to be like, they will then hire as many women as they can, because they can make out fairly well just from the workers. You know, so they don't even care if there's a lot of competition, because they can take their money just from the workers. It's a mess. You know, there's very little recourse. The brothel workers are also declared as independent contractors, when you would say they pretty much fall into the category of employees more likely. And we all know that that's done in all our industries. So there's just, you know, just an amazing amount of problematic regulations in Nevada. Now, you know, that is not to say that some woman can go to Nevada and have a great time and can love working there and is very successful and makes $5,000 a week. A lot of people feel good about that and it works. So I don't want to put down this, you know, the brothel worker next to me who, you know, is having a good job there and she might resent it. And it used to be, in the beginning of the prostitutes' rights movement, we used to criticize Nevada a lot, because we really needed to tell the rest of the United States that we didn't want that. We don't really do that anymore. We try to step back. We mount our criticisms subtly. They know there's a criticism, but their system is under attack. We don't want no system. We don't want to criminalize. And there's under such attack that we find it hard now to come in there and articulate what our problems are. So it's an interesting issue, and we try to move forward with it. It's progressed to that extent, but there's always some conflict about that, because some of the younger women want to be angry at the brothels, you know. And then the women who work at the brothels don't like that. There's fights. So what we talk about, though, is not legalization. We say, you know, we want decriminalization. So Margaret St. James says that her friend, Deborah James, her friend was the first one to use the term decriminalization in the prostitutes' rights movement to talk about what we want. If you go to a lawyer, this distinction between decriminalization and legalization, this is not like a legal distinction. This is not like a textbook that, you know, does not have like textbook reality. This is an activist definition that we use. But it's something that's been very handy in the movement. So when you know, if you go into some public context, it doesn't make much sense. However, when we talk about decriminalization, we talk about systems akin to the New Zealand model. And they call it decriminalization. And in this model, prostitution is regulated according to labor codes, health codes, and regulated exactly like every other business. So some people think decriminalization means no rules. Like, they have this idea that the prostitutes' rights movement is going around saying, we don't want any rules. I think people really do think that. Well, I can't say there's no prostitutes who say, you know, some prostitutes might say that. But the movement as a whole really talks about labor regulations, occupational health, and safety issues. So how do you develop those models is a long term. And as you see here, some of what they're requesting is based on that. Unionization. I don't know how familiar you are with the Amsterdam model. A lot of people think it's very legal in Amsterdam. There's all kinds of images of what Amsterdam is now. Well, Amsterdam actually was based on the abolitionist decriminalization model. And yes, Amsterdam, it was illegal, brothels were illegal, pimping was illegal, and the only thing legal was prostitution per se. So they had some of the same laws that were in some of the other countries, but the trick was in Amsterdam, they had a toleration policy, where they just wouldn't enforce, wouldn't arrest. So what wound up happening is that they wound up having legal prostitution because they just weren't arresting people, they weren't enforcing whatever laws were there. Then, a few years later, in response to trafficking, they legalized the brothels. Now, that's not legalized in the bad sense. It gets confusing. The prostitutes' rights movement doesn't necessarily say we don't want brothels legalized. If legalized means to register a brothel. To have a large business registered is not something we necessarily object to. But to have a large business is something, and that's what they did anyway in the Netherlands. They made the brothels legal. They got rid of those old abolitionist codes. So making the brothels legal, prostitutes could get Social Security. And they could also better regulate the business around trafficking. But downside of that, very serious downside, they started trying to get rid of the immigrant sex workers. Because now, the only ones who really were legal, when the brothels were legal and everything was legal, was just like other businesses. Guess what? Forget migrants. I mean, all the horrible laws we have about workers and migration they have too, and came down on the migrant sex workers. So now it's another challenge, and that's one of the central issues in Europe now, is how to protect them from the migrant sex workers. So, we see how the emphasis of the movement has developed over this time. Other things here. So while we had the prostitutes' rights movement develop in the United States, huge prostitute movements developed, especially in South Asia, Southeast Asia. In India, the most amazing organization that was started as an HIV organization and started getting sex workers, supporting them around HIV prevention, began to work with sex workers' rights. And they said something that was really wonderful to hear out of the HIV movement. Because if you recall, personally, I was very nervous to have the movement kind of taken over by the AIDS movement. I was nervous. This movement said you can't protect people's health unless they have the rights. And you have to also, of course, address issues of poverty. You have to address social issues, and you have to give sex workers their rights. And, they said, how can a woman protect herself against HIV if she's illegal and she can't get police protection? How can she worry about her health and take care of her health if she's running from the police? How can the sex worker, how can they function if they basically don't have their rights? So they started an organization that was for HIV prevention, and they also started a credit union and an organization for rights. And, they tell me that their organization is like a country. Like, it has so many people and so many working parts and so many programs, and it's just almost like a state in itself. I think that's very interesting. I feel like I was going to invest in their banks. And you get little micro loans. They have influenced the movement. They've been, internationally, I think that this is the lead organization internationally. Now, Bill Gates, big supporter. He has given so much to this organization. I think Bill and Melinda have been the best supporters. Yeah. Yes. Bill Gates loves the Indian sex workers.
I quote you on that.
Yeah. Durbar Mahilya Samadwaya Committee.